Good morning.
Hello.
Welcome along. Pinch Punch, it's the first of the month. I just realised we are a very early first Wednesday of the month for Webinar Wednesday, the 1st of June. Very efficient for us.
Very efficient. It's worked out grand, and the sun is shining up here in Aberdeen for us. So I don't know how it is. It looks like it's quite a nice day with you as well. So.
Aye, nice and bright. I think summer's starting. Maybe we don't want to jinx it, but it feels like we're just edging into summer rather than spring, which is nice.
Which is good, isn't it? Because I think we've been chatting at some of our catch-ups about just doing more of the ordinary stuff and the outdoor spaces, the connecting with people. That there's a lot more of that going on, and it's starting to feel a lot more safe now. So that's really great. Morning, Liam.
Morning.
So today we've got, if anybody wants to get ready with their thoughts and questions for Dr. Danielle Farrel, she's going to be joining us, and we're going to be chatting about the disability premium or the disability price tag, whatever you want to call it. So the difference between what folk without disabilities spend on things, and how people's experience of carrying out everyday stuff versus what it takes when you've got a disability. So if anybody's got anything they want to share, that would be lovely.
Be brilliant. It'd be brilliant to hear for if anybody's faced any particular challenges that resonate, please tell us, because we're interested in being able to kind of amplify these and make sure that it's not a badly kept secret that there is this imbalance. And the question is, would you spend £60 on a mug, Alastair? Most expensive cup of tea in your life?
It would need to be a hell of a mug, wouldn't it? Really. It would need to be something that held a mega pint. Oh, that's not good.
Don't go there.
Don't go there. Right. So before we get Danielle in to join us, what other stuff have we got? Because it's another busy month at In Control Scotland, hasn't it?
It sure is. So we've got loads of stuff on the go at the moment. We'll tell you a few wee bits and bobs of what we're up to, because there's lots that we'd love our viewers and members and colleagues to join in on. We are our programme of children and families lunchtime sessions are still carrying on the last Thursday of the month, and Alastair's bringing up a wee flyer about this. So these were started last year, and they've continued because they've been a great space for people to come together and share practice and find solutions, and that's open to anybody interested in children and families, from young people and parents themselves to practitioners to support providers, anybody that's interested to come along and chat. Mm-hmm. And the topic for this week is planning support with children and families.
Yeah.
So that'll be a great chat. So you're all welcome to come along. If you want to join in, just send us a wee email, info@in-controlscotland.org.uk, and let us know.
Perfect.
And then on a similar theme, we've got the Tuesday lunchtime session. So this is a new series that was started this year on the second Tuesday, 2 for Tuesday, good morning, Keith, on more general areas of kind of SDS learning and practice. And it's a similar theme for the children's one as it is for this one, isn't it, Alastair?
Yeah, absolutely. So that thing about we make it quite informal. You can drop in, drop out. It's not like if you're not there within the first 5 minutes, you can't attend. It's an informal chat, but it's been really well attended, hasn't it? I mean, lots of folk engaging with it. So we're just really looking to keep engaged with people about problem solving, about sharing good practice, and just connecting with one another. And I guess linking to that, working together probably brings us to another bit of work.
It does. Nice segue, silky smooth. We at Eagle-Eyed or regular viewers will know that we did Working Together for Change as a programme for the first time last year. Actually, well, second time, but first time we managed to complete it because something called COVID got in the way when it started the first time around. But we finished that programme at the end of March, and we're all meeting as a team tomorrow, aren't we, to kind of go through what we learned and what participants told us and how we can open that up to a new bunch of participants next time around. So watch this space. We'll be recruiting for that hopefully quite soon.
Yep. So that's another really, really interesting bit of work, because it's not just about naming the things that are wrong and getting frustrated about it. It's about that whole thing about how can we commit to something that we're facing that we would like to work in a bit more depth on, so that we make sure that we don't just don't just keep going round in circles feeling frustrated about things, but we actually connect lots of folks together to make a difference on it.
Aye, definitely. And that's about bringing together people who use services or parents or carers. We had a couple of foster carers at the last cohort, along with people from social work, health, providers, anybody. And that's the point, is that no one person has any of the answers, but together all the bits of the jigsaw can really join together and get proper solutions to work together for change. It's in the name.
Absolutely.
But on that kind of note of bringing people together as well, we had a catch up yesterday, and we've got another one planned to talk about Citizen Fest. So we held, or we're part of the team that held Citizen Fest. Just feels like yesterday, but it was a good few weeks ago now. So it would be brilliant to hear if anybody watching this webinar took part and watched it online or came along in person. If you want to tell us any feedback that you had about the event, we'd really welcome that, because we're starting to plan and do a bit of planning and thinking about what we do next with that. So if you've got any feedback, please get in touch. It'd be great to hear from you.
Definitely. So what other stuff have we catching up on? We've been catching up on like the sort of Citizen Fest stuff. The New Roots Home, we've got another one of our monthly meetings on that coming up as well. So that's at 3 p.m. on the 9th, so next Thursday. And that anybody's welcome to join us for that. And then that's looking at trying to again unstick situations where people are either out of area placed, stuck in hospital, are in danger of losing their tenancies because people are struggling to find the right way to support them.
Yes, really, really, really important conversations to be part of. And like you say, anybody's welcome to come along to that. So if you are a person who has a bit of fire in your belly about this injustice that is happening to people, and you believe that actually everybody's got the right to have their own home and be part of their local community, then please come along and join in the conversation, because it's partly about campaigning for change, but it's also partly sharing experiences and trying to find good practice where it happens, and look at how we can make that the norm, not an exception.
Yeah, absolutely. So anything else before we bring?
One other thing, the statutory guidance. So this is there's statutory guidance for self-directed support that was pulled together and launched at the same time as the legislation, so almost 10 years ago. And that's really the kind of detail in the how SDS is done, I suppose, at its most basic explanation. And that's going through a review process at the moment. So it's not been reviewed for that whole time. And obviously the world has changed quite a lot, and things have evolved and got better in lots of areas. And there's lots for us to learn from the last few years. So Scottish Government are reviewing the statutory guidance, and we're part of that conversation. And we'd really like to use our Tuesday session in July to speak with all of you, and so people using SDS, people who are supporting people who are using SDS, people who are just interested in SDS, and maybe you're an advocate or you're just an interested person, you're caring for someone. So we'll be using that space on the second Tuesday in July. Oh, I should have checked the date. It's the second Tuesday of July, to come together to get your feedback on what that is, because it's really important. It's a really important document, and we want to make sure it's right for everybody.
Yeah, so second Tuesday in July I have is the 12th.
That'll do. Yep.
12th. Yeah, that's it. Perfect. Good stuff. Right, okay, well, we invite Danielle to join us. Morning, Danielle.
Morning.
Good morning. How are you today? You well?
All right, how are you?
We are wonderful. We're delighted to have you on again. This isn't your first. It's been a while. I was going to say it's definitely not your first rodeo.
No.
But we're delighted to have Dr. Danielle Farrel along today to talk about this issue, the disability premier, disability price tag. But before we kick off, Danielle, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a wee bit more about who you are and what you do?
So yeah, I'm Dr. Danielle Farrel, as Pauline said, and I'm the Managing Director of Your Options Understood. I support a lot of people with disabilities and families living with disability through a range of services, including advocacy, education and training, consultancy, and self-directed support. I will also support businesses and employers seeking to be fully inclusive. And I also have various hats for In Control Scotland. I sit on your board. I'm also an associate, and I do commissioned work sort of as and when required. So yeah.
Loads of stuff, definitely. So I guess one of the things we've talked about over the last while, and you've done some videos on your channel, is about the difference in, I guess, well, your feature was about products, particularly specialist products versus mainstream products.
Yeah.
Do you want to give us a little bit of an edited highlight of some of the differences between the product costs and that are in the video that you put on your channel? And kind of the mainstream alternatives.
Yeah. So the piece that you're referring to was published last week, and I did that for the BBC Social. But I also have my own channel, and I've did a series of product reviews a while back, just again to highlight this because it's something I always refer to as the disability price tag, because you can get a lot of similar items on the mainstream market that do a lot of similar things, but the minute an item is promoted for just the disabled market, you've got the disability price tag slapped on it with about 3 extra zeros, just because it's got that target market attached to it. So in the video for the BBC Social, I was looking at a smart device, a cup that I heard you guys talking about at the beginning, slide sheets that I need to be supported during the night, and I think that was kind of the 3 main things. Yeah.
So the smart tech stuff, I guess, was about using things to turn on and off lights and things like that, which has become far more mainstream nowadays. I mean, like you say, a few years ago, those sorts of devices were very much only available as disability adaptations. But now with your Alexa, with your smart light bulbs, with smart plugs that connect to things, it's much more seen as something that's ordinary and mainstream, and the prices have come right down. But the specialist disabled focused disability focused products, you highlighted the one like Possum, for example, as being I haven't looked at the prices for them recently, but I think they are quite eye-watering compared to your Alexas and your smart light bulbs, aren't they?
Yeah.
So, was there anything else that you wanted to highlight in terms of that bit of it, this sort of smart technology?
It was just even like going back to the mention of the cup earlier. Like my dad said, surprisingly, he had watched it. My dad doesn't do social media that well, but he came across the video when he was speaking to me about it, and he said to me, "I thought that cup was only £5," and I was like, "Dad, really? Nothing that's there for disabled people has such a low price to attach to it." And he said, "But it's just a bit of plastic." And I was like, "Yeah, you're totally right." But again, because of like you said, it's the most expensive cup of tea that you'll ever buy. But if they had lower prices, I know that there's an argument that there's a high prices because they're not in as high demand as your mainstream products. But I would argue, like I said in the BBC social piece, that if they were lower in price, then they would be more accessible and arguably they would sell more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's that difference, isn't there? About you can argue that some bits of kit require a lot of research and development and a lot of product testing and maybe a lot of fancy stuff to build, but like a cup with a chunky handle and a non-slip lid, I'm struggling to see the R&D there.
It's not rocket science.
It's not, is it?
No.
There is something important in it, though, about why that we sometimes use an analogy of a snowy day, and there's a set of stairs, and there's a ramp, and there's a queue of people waiting to get into the building to get the snow brushed off. And the first thing somebody does is to brush the snow off the stairs. So because there are more people that can use the stairs than aren't. And the idea being, if you clear the snow off the ramp in the first instance, then everybody can get in, and it's equitable and equality. There's equality there. So actually, if there were just more mainstream products that were accessible and easy to use, everybody's lives are easier. And I think the fact that the assistive technology idea is so equivalent to Alexa or to whatever Android smart devices you're using in your house is dead interesting, because actually that's a bit of technology that can benefit everybody. So why do we not start from that initial position that make everything accessible to everybody, rather than there being special bits of kit that don't necessarily add any value to your life beyond what you can buy for Argos for 50 quid, you know? It's
It goes back to the whole special needs. I hate that term because I'm kind of like, I have additional needs.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just sort of my preference, because everybody with a disability has the same needs as everybody else. They have additional needs because of their disability. So it kind of relates to what you're saying, Pauline. If products were just available for everybody, then there's nothing special about them.
aye, and your market is infinite. You're opening it up for everybody.
And I guess that one of the things that you've identified there, Danielle, is that there's potentially a bit of a cynicism there about you're charging that because you're going to get away with it. It's a bit like there was a comedy sketch quite a few years back where somebody goes into a flower shop and they ask for a bunch of flowers, and then they mention it's for a wedding, and it suddenly goes from being a £5 to being like £50 for the same bunch of flowers. Oh, but these are wedding flowers, and it was that kind of it's that same mentality, isn't it? It's suddenly, this is it. You're selling the same thing, but as soon as you mention it's for something else, this needs to be different. And I guess as well as the prices for physical items, we're keen to kind of broaden out into experiences as well, because I guess one of the things that we noticed, and it was at Citizen Fest, ironically, an event looking at people's rights and equality and all that sort of stuff, that we had an experience where we booked 2 taxis to come back from the hotel in Glasgow to the bus station. Now, I'll just share the screen here. This is the social media post we put up about it. So the same pickup point, same time we left, same destination. So with 2 cars, one had a mix of people with and without disabilities in it, and the other car, all the passengers had a learning disability or autism. So the first one took the direct route. So if I looked up on Google Maps, and there was one route that was shorter and faster. According to Google Maps, it wasn't even close. On that day, I appreciate, things change, different days if there's roadworks or whatever. But this was Sunday morning; it was quiet, and the first taxi that I was in went the quick way, the direct way, didn't ask us, didn't say anything about a different way or anything. The other one, which gave the same destination, apparently the driver looked at the passengers and said, "Oh, which way do you want to go? There's this way that avoids the traffic lights. Would you like to go that way?" And the folk who were going just said, "Look, we just want to go there as quickest way possible." And so they ended up going a lot longer, a lot slower way, and they ended up getting charged £16.30 for the same journey as the other car, which was £11.80. So that's 38% more for the same journey, which is that's a fair old price hike, isn't it?
Yep. It definitely is. And I think there's when we started speaking about this, we heard of other people's experiences as well. And transport seems to be a real common struggle. And Danielle, it's become a running joke with Danielle about when it comes to the trials and tribulations of Danielle's travel arrangements, which is really sad that it has become a running joke. But you have to laugh or you'll cry. Yeah. But you've certainly had some experiences, to put it mildly, just with everyday journeys. I mean, obviously we can talk about when you've had to get planes and go internationally, but I think it'd be great to find out, just even traveling locally, how much of a barrier transport can be for you. Would you mind telling us a couple of examples?
No, that's fine. So even like locally, so the local taxi drivers sort of, all of them kind of know me, but so if I'm like calling up to get a taxi to go to the train station to do something for my work, and then they'll be like, "Oh, we can't get you at that time, but it's okay, we could get you at 8:30," and I'm kind of like, "No, I need to go at 8 because I've got to get to my work," and it's kind of like, "Well, do you work?" And I always feel it's kind of like they just think I'm going on a jolly, and that it doesn't matter even if I was, because that's important to me. So, but it's almost that dismissal of, "Oh, it's okay, we'll get you whenever." Well, no, I need it at a time. And then there's the other aspect of you. A lot of my work means that I'm either in Glasgow or further afield. And as you say, Pauline, it's a standing joke because I've regularly debate with Glasgow taxi drivers. So on the rank outside the train station, you'll have black hackneys or you'll have 6-seater Eurocabs. My wheelchair has 6 wheels, so it has 2 at the front, 2 wee wheels at the front, the big wheels, and then it has 2 wheels at the back, so it kind of goes in and out. So I can't comfortably get into a hackney, so I prefer a 6-seater Euro because it just gives more space. But if a hackney's at the front of the rank, and I was explaining to the driver, or my support worker was explaining to the driver, I'm actually going to use the one behind you because there's more space. They'll be like, "But we're accessible." I'm like, "Well, yeah, I know you are technically, but just because of the type of wheelchair, it's not really accessible for me." And he'll be like, "But we could get you in." And they would debate with me, and sometimes I'll say my tagline of, "Okay, what the animal, I only love it." So sometimes I'll say, "Okay, let's try." So they'll get me. I'll try and get up the ramp and maybe the footplate will get caught and they'll go, "Well, you can't really get in here, can you?" And I'm like, "What have I been saying for the last 10 minutes? But okay, you've seen for yourself." But it's the same debate all the time with taxi drivers, but then you'll get other ones that, and I'll say this to them, they'll say, "It doesn't matter." We get people saying they prefer a Eurocab because they like to see out the window. It doesn't matter. People shouldn't debate these things. because that's got nothing to do with disability. It's just people's preferences.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good point, isn't it? I mean, you were so serious about your tagline. You've even got it tattooed on your arm. Can you show? Could you show it? Or is it?
It's on my arm, so like, so it's under my jumper.
Oh, you're under your jumper. Well, we'll get a close up.
I don't know if you can see it there, but
it's maybe just a little bit. Let's see if we can.
It's got my move that out the way. Hold on.
Right, I'll make you that. There you are, a close up.
It's sort of on my arm, and then it's, if I turn my arm around, you maybe see it a bit better.
I can see that, yeah.
Then so there's the tagline going around the top of the avatar. So around here.
And that's a really nice avatar. Where did you get that?
I don't know, Alastair, that's fine. I think somebody might have helped me with that, Alastair.
I know. It's the first time, genuinely, it's the first time anything that I've designed, anybody's decided to get tattooed on themselves. So
there you go. That's a compliment.
It's brilliant, though, isn't it? So thinking about that whole thing about people deciding they know better. So folk thinking that you've obviously got, it's quite a bulky chair you've got, because it's got a lot of batteries on it. So it's awkward shaped. So people just think a wheelchair is a wheelchair. But in the same way as no two people are the same, no two wheelchairs are the same, the ground clearance, the angles to get in and about. So people should just listen to you, shouldn't they? You should bet them. You know what you should do? You should bet them beforehand. You should say, I'll bet you a $5 you can't get me in there. And then you'll be minted. You want to need to work.
Yeah, I'd be quite rich.
Mm-hmm. There's when we started talking about this as well, though, it was interesting. We had another person share an experience, a woman called Debbie, who works for Gig Buddies, who are a project that help people with learning disabilities get buddied up with other music lovers to go to gigs together. And she told us the story that a taxi driver refused to take the young woman that she was with who had cerebral palsy because, and I'm paraphrasing here because I think the language was probably not suitable for a webinar Wednesday, but it was along the lines of disabled people can't travel on their own; they need an escort. This is a young woman who was quite comfortable and quite used to traveling in taxis on her own, was a regular customer, was refused because of the perception of a taxi driver that they need somebody with them, they with a capital B, as in this is a different group of people for me. This is a different, there's an immediate kind of bias there. And these are not the only stories we hear about these barriers being put in place to just folk getting about their everyday lives. And when we were chatting about this session coming up, it was just I can't imagine having this level of worry about whether or not I can get onto a bus or a train because there's space for me in the first instance, or whether somebody's attitude is going to prevent me from getting a bus or a train or a taxi. It's just unthinkable for us as able-bodied people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had that said to me as well. There was an instance where there was eight accessible taxis on the rank, and not one would take me. And some of them were saying they were exempt, and others just couldn't be bothered. And I asked every one of them, and I said it loud enough so that they could hear me. I said, well, what's the point in driving an accessible taxi if you are willing to take the disabled passengers? Just drive a car then. And then one of the drivers came out and gave me a card and said, phone that number. And the driver that came said, why did you just phone me? There was 8 sitting there. And I said, not one of them would take me. And he said to me that that's becoming a regular occurrence, that people are just getting exemption certificates or just can't be bothered.
And that's shocking, isn't it? Because I mean, it's not just like, oh well, there'll be another one along in a minute. It's so disrespectful, but also it can have serious impacts on your travel plans, on your confidence. I mean, if somebody's got, for example, anxiety about getting out and about and doing things and all this, there's been all the health stuff. That to add to that, if you think, you know what, even though I've made all the plans, I've made the arrangements, some people might just throw that in the bin straight away. It's just it just must play havoc with your confidence that things are going to go according to plan, especially on the other end of the night. You know, if you're coming back, like if you were getting a taxi to a train, maybe the last train of the night, for example, and they don't take you, then what, you're stuck with an overnight? Who's going to pay for that?
Yeah. And then obviously for me, obviously I'm travelling to work and things, and then these things happen, and whether you've got a disability or not, they can't always be controlled. But if it's a case of I haven't been able to get on a train because of an arm not being there or whatever, that I've got the added thing of that makes me look really unprofessional if I'm turning up late because there isn't an arm there or whatever. So there's that sort of added element as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So one of the other ones that I've seen a couple of stories. I'll just share one on screen just now. Is it's just it was in the Guardian yesterday. This one, and this is says disabled passenger abandoned on a plane in Manchester Airport for over 2 hours, and there was a one by a BBC reporter just a couple of weeks ago saying the same thing about nobody being there to help them off, or not having lost or not having their wheelchair or all this type of stuff. So this guy was like, so if you could maybe miss your connecting flight, you could miss your work appointment, or your, you know what I mean, could be anything. So this is basically it's happening really, really regularly. People just being stuck on planes and not being helped to get off. So this was I think there was it's just like a minute long. But anyway, that was just a little bit of an example of that. Just wanted to think about that as a particular thing. It's almost like you're doing your favor. You know, even if you get something, it's like, it's rather than it being a basic part of the service, it's like, oh, we'll get to you when we can. You know, we're really busy, or we've got all this going on, rather than saying, you booked this, you need this. You never get like them just saying, oh, sorry, we forgot to unlock the doors to let everybody else off the plane. You know, it just wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's also the other thing being, there's so many layers to this, right? There's obviously a financial cost, there's an attitude issue, sometimes there's barriers in that way, but the extra time and preparation and planning, and Danielle, we've spoken a lot about this, about some, like, your ability to be spontaneous and just do things as and when you fancy doing it, and how sometimes support arrangements can get in the way of that. But compounded on top of that is the fact that what do you need to do before you get on a train, like, or a plane? What are the kind of steps that you need to take to make sure that you can access?
So for a train, so say for example, I was coming up to Glasgow tomorrow, so I would need to look today and say, well, I'm getting the 909 train, for example, because that's one I regularly get. And then I would need to phone ScotRail and say to them, I'm going on this train, and they ask you what assistance you need, so then they have to book it. In all fairness, I will say that if there's staff at the station and you haven't booked, 9 times out of 10 they'll still assist. So, but for me, I wouldn't go without booking, because I just think I've got that reassurance, because if you've got a disability and you've booked assistance and for whatever reason they can't get you on the train, then it's a policy that they have to find an alternative for you to get home or to get to wherever you're going. So if you don't book your assistance, you don't have that backup, is what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. But in saying that, sometimes when you're booking a train to come home, you can't always. So there's quite often that I'll miss the train that I booked and I'll have to go on the next one. 9 times out of 10 it's okay, but yeah, you still have that worry where you're like, will there be somebody there to get me on and off? And my local station has been quite short staffed recently, so I've had to, like, when I've booked assistants, to advise that they'll need to book on train assistants so that the conductor will come off the train and get them, because if there's no staff at the station and the conductor doesn't look out or there isn't one on the train, then I'm kind of snookered.
Yeah. And that's so commonly all the small, where I stay, it's just a wee train station. It's not manned most of the time. So this is a real issue for folk living in slightly more rural communities as well, where you don't have a big central station with loads and loads of staff around about to kind of help you if needed. There's just more barriers and barriers.
Another thing in relation to the air travel that I can't remember if it's about a year or so ago. I think it was round about just the middle of the pandemic. I heard it from Anne-Marie Monaghan, and she had said that she'd planned to go on a family holiday to Tenerife, and literally as they were boarding the plane, they said, "Oh, your wheelchair doesn't meet the safety standards." They had changed the size of the batteries that they were prepared to accept for fire risk, and they had lowered the capacity on the battery that anything they could take on board would take, and hers didn't fit that, and so she literally waved goodbye to everybody else who went away on her holiday, and because she just didn't feel she could go without a power chair, and she was at the airport with a power chair there, and so she missed her holiday and lost out on the money and everything. She couldn't go. Just really shocking,
I haven't had a lot of experience as an adult travelling by like airplane, but I accompanied Keith and John to Brussels back in 2019 for the skills conference, and I said to Keith when he asked me, I said, "You're probably going to need a holiday at the end of this," because I knew it wouldn't be straightforward, but I thought, okay, let's do it. And I, like, similarly to what you've just said there, Alastair, I actually had to hire a power chair because mine was going to be too heavy. So I hired the chair, and the assistants and all that being booked. I'd done that at the travel agent, and when we got to the airport, they had no record of my assistance, but they got me on the plane. But then announced over the tannoy that the plane was leaving because they had problems loading a wheelchair, and I was actually sat there and I thought, you might as well just put a neon light above my head and said that was her fault that the plane was
blame her.
Yeah.
So, and that's not even mentioning the extra cost and the chaos and carnage that ensues when you need things like shower chairs or stand aids when you go away, like mobility equipment and aids to be able to help you.
That time he done that, I sorted the wheelchair, but yeah.
Yeah. But just for you to be able to travel and go somewhere else, to have these costs just racking up and racking up and racking up.
It's not straightforward at all.
That's that thing, isn't it? Yeah, because you've got baggage allowances, and obviously the more equipment that you need to take with you, you've got no choice because you need these things. Well, you wouldn't get it onto Ryanair then, would you? Because you can't take much more than a packet of crisps on there without.
No.
So what do we think? I mean, we're not going to fix everything, but what do you think? Is there anything that we should think about doing about this? Because obviously we're trying to raise awareness, and I guess we're trying to encourage people to think more fairly. I mean, for example, with the taxi thing, what I did was I included both the receipts. I included the description of what had happened, and I contacted the taxi firm to say, can you speak to your drivers and improve, the training about just thinking about that sort of stuff? Because one of the guys was quite distressed about the fact that he was being asked which way to go when he clearly said, I'm not from Glasgow, I don't know. And he was continually asked, will I go this way or will I go that way? You've got Google Maps now. I mean, it was really straightforward before. Here's Keith saying it was Ryanair to Brussels. There we go.
Yeah, I thought that, Keith.
Oh, well, there we go. Nothing but the finest in Control Scotland. There we go. But at least it worked in the end. But nothing against Ryanair. If they want to send us some free flights for another trip for you,
Yeah, that would be
you know
good.
what I mean? I want to say no. The power of social media. Anyway, but the good thing about Google Maps and that now is that you can actually look in real time and see this is the shortest route, this is the fastest route. So I looked it up on my phone because I was trying to, obviously, we didn't want to be in the bus station like more than an hour before the bus because there's not that much to do at Buchanan bus station. So I aimed to be there about 3/4 of an hour beforehand. So I'd worked out the times on there so it clearly could see there's the direct route and here's the motorway route. It was from the Crookston Hotel to Buchanan Street. So anybody can Google it. And on a Sunday morning, on that particular Sunday morning in particular, there was no doubt which was faster and which was shorter. So that was it. Oh yes, we weren't allowed crisps.
No, we went.
And Liam, if we get freebies from Ryanair, you're invited. So we need an extra ticket for Liam as well, please, Mr. Ryanair.
And Ashley is saying why. I'll need to ask you, Ashley, which bit are you saying why? So we were saying about the taxi costs. So we got to the far end, and like I say, the folk arrived within about 5 minutes. The folk were, funnily enough, the longer, slower one took longer. But again, it's interesting that of the two cars, like I was the one giving the direction in the car that the destination, not the directions really. And if it been the other way around, if the other one had taken the shorter route and I would have got given the longer route, the question would be, oh well, was this just somebody chancing it? But obviously my concern was, has this person just taken advantage of the fact that there's clearly folk have disabilities, so you'll just take the scenic route, and we wrote to the taxi company to encourage them to think differently and educate their drivers and come back to us, and we had no response. So Glasgow cabs, if you're watching this, have a look through your emails. It's really disappointing, but we just would want to change things. We don't just want to complain about things. We want to work with people to improve it.
I always make a point when I get a good Glasgow taxi driver. I always say, "Why can't they all be like you?" And they'll say to me, "What do you mean?" So I'll tell them, and then they'll say, "That's terrible. That's terrible. That you should raise that a bit more often and stuff." But for the reason that you've just said, we don't want to say that everybody's bad, but for that reason, when I get a good taxi driver, I will make a point of saying that to them so that they're aware that what they're doing is good practice, and so that if they become aware of somebody else who's behaving entirely differently, then they know they're doing their job right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, here's some more comments. Everywhere is different in what they have set up. Hiring a stand aid in Brussels was easy, but getting a taxi was terrible. That's interesting.
Absolutely, but that's a whole other episode of Webinar Wednesday.
And just to clarify, the comments about the crisps were a joke. Before anybody says that was just a comment on how little you can take on the flights. Just not that they refused you crisps.
Aye.
So,
So I think your question, Alastair, about how can we make things better is a really good one, and it'd be great to get your thoughts on it, Danielle, about like how do we get away from this, whether it's that attitude barriers or physical barriers or price barriers. How do we start other than complaining where it's bad and praising it where it's good? Is there anything else you can think of that people can do?
Maybe getting to speak to the right people about education and training. How we do that, I'm not sure, because I spent my life trying to find the right people for your options understood to speak to. So I think it's a bit about chipping away and just hoping that you get the right person at the right time, and even if they say no at one point, that doesn't necessarily mean they're not interested ever. It might mean it's just not the right time, and go back to them in another time, and hopefully they remind them of the first conversation, and hopefully it will be a right time. But I think there's also something about maybe a social media campaign, or just about highlighting different people's experiences, whether it's through vlogs or vlogs or both, or some sort of social media content. There's something about breaking down the barriers and myths about, like what you said earlier about that young girl not being, or young lady not being able, that driver thinking she couldn't drive herself. That's obviously a myth that he believes is true. So something about highlighting those kind of things, and having these videos and content ready to take the Glasgow taxis and ask to meet with them, and ask to meet with, I don't know, the manager or whoever it is, and just say, well, we know you do. You cover the whole city and beyond, so let us help you get it right. We'll tell you when you're doing it wrong, but we'll do it constructively so that you can improve things. We're not. It shouldn't be a us and them. It should be a partnership.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I'll just say this is it seems like a good opportunity, Danielle, for you to plug your options understood. If anybody's watching and they fancy a bit of training or support and learning how to do better with and for disabled people, give yourself a wee plug, Danielle.
Yeah,
Go
but
for it.
please get in touch. I'm here. If there's training that's available that you need that's not available right now, I'm happy to have that chat too. But just come along and chat to me, or pick up the phone, and I'm happy to have a chat.
And I think Danielle's website, could you pop that up on the screen? It's just been shared in the comments. Just there you go.
Thanks, Keith.
Look at that. He's doing it. He's doing a great job of being June today, isn't he?
He's on it.
So yeah, so it sounds like there's a lot that can be done. There's a lot of work to do, isn't there, to try and make things more equal and more inclusive.
Definitely. I mean, I guess one of the things that just when we were talking about it there that made me think of is, we talk about, for some people, we talk about things like either advanced statements or disciplinary care plans about if you've had an experience to do with support and services and you think that needs to be different next time, it's almost like we need to apply those principles to these things, like saying, like, this is the stuff that's been difficult. This is how we'd like to try and avoid it. Try and get people on board to say, how can it be difficult this time? And then we just we just try and keep connected to them, before, during, and after, so that we can then say, oh look, so did it go according to plan? Did it not? And what's different? So that people can obviously maybe celebrate. You'll be a fan club there, Liam.
Thanks, Liam. I appreciate that.
And Keith's saying he is June today. Who knows? Who knows?
First of June is Keith is, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think if you're struggling to understand, look for the bad joke, and then you'll probably get there.
It's one of Keith's jokes.
What would we do without Keith's jokes?
Brilliant. All right. Any other final thoughts for today, folks?
Thanks for having me along again.
No, it was a pleasure to have you. And just have a wee look at Danielle's website and see if there's anything that interests you. Get in touch. And just a huge thank you to you for coming along today and sharing your stories. And we'll see you all next month on the first Wednesday of July.
Brilliant. See you later.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.